Hello, brothers and sisters. This is my testimony. When I was a young boy growing up at my mom's house, my mom wasn't very religious, but she made sure we always went to church. We did all our sacraments. We were raised Roman Catholics. But I had an aunt that was very, very religious, and she made sure we went to all the things that we needed to go to. I remember one time me and my uncle went and instead of going to confession, we didn't. We went ahead, but my brother was behind us, and he saw us. And we came back, and my aunt asked, "Did you guys go to confession?" And we said, "Yes, tia." And they said, "Mentirosos." He started hitting us. That was my beginning of my religious upbringing. But like I said, my mom's very religious. And after the 8th grade, my mom told us, "You can, if you want to keep going to church, you can go to church. If you don't want to go, you don't go. You don't have to go." So as being a young man, a young boy, I said, "I'm not going anymore," and I didn't go. About this time, I went to the service. I didn't go to church even then. But I remember one time I was in AIT training. There's this young man that preached Jesus to me. And I heard and I listened to him. It was like a new thing to me. But I didn't pay a lot of mind. Anyway, a couple of days later, I got drunk. And I was sleeping on the top of the bunk bed, and he slept on the bottom. Well, later at night, I got violently sick, and I threw up all over him. And instead of being angry, he came, took me to the shower to shower. He changed all the linen and everything, and never said anything about it. And I said to myself, "This is a real Christian." But it didn't change my life still. But it was the beginning. I remember all the time I was in Vietnam twice. I came really close to being killed. And I always thought, man, I'm lucky. And then later on someone said, "Aren't you afraid?" I said, "No, this might sound silly to you, but I always thought, I'm an American. If I get killed or anything, I'll go to heaven." Makes as much sense as all dogs will go to heaven. Like all Americans go to heaven. Well, later on I got married, and even then I didn't go to church. My wife would go, and I didn't want to go. And one day some people came knocking on my door, and I let them in. They were Jehovah's Witnesses. So I started studying with them. And we went through all the books. They have a bunch of books you go through. At the end of the last book, his name was David. He asked me, "Do you want to become a Jehovah's Witness?" And I said, "Well, David, so what happens if I don't become a Jehovah's Witness and I die?" He said, "Remember the study we did that there's no hell?" I said, "Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Well, there's no hell, you just quit existing." I said to myself, "Hey, I can deal with that. I'll just live my life the way I want to, and then I'll die and don't have to give account of anything." And so it went that way. But deep inside I knew there was something else. There was a heaven, there was a hell. Anyway, about that time, believe it or not, revival came to Clifton. Churches started opening up, and one of the first ones to open up was a church called The Door. And I started going there. I remember I took my sister Lisa, she was a little girl at that time with me. And I listened to it, and I liked what they said. The only thing I didn't like was, you never were quite good enough. Every time I went, they wanted to take me up to the altar, up to the altar, up to the altar. There was no assurance of anything there. So I got tired of them too, and I said, forget this. About this time, I was driving a haul truck for at that time it was Phelps Dodge, and one time I got in my truck and I was thinking, and I found a little booklet. And remember the little booklet was called Holy Joe. I read it, I reread it. I don't know how many times I read it, but it touched my heart. And I thought about it all that night. And next day I went back to work that next night, and there was another little book. I think it was a chick publication, and this was Your Life. That's the second one. And I read that one over and over, and I realized there is something out there. And like I said, at this time, there was another church that was opening up, and it was a house church, and there was a guy named Oscar Trujillo, who witnessed to me. And I said, "Yeah, Oscar, I'll go," and I did go. And that's when the first time when I accepted Christ. Before I would say, but they were just words. but I accepted Christ. The pastor's name was Pastor Brother Bill. He was just an old hillbilly preacher, man, knowledgeable in the Word, man. And there was a bunch of us at that time that went to that church. And he was a great teacher, great teacher, great teacher. He taught us how to, and we were all new to it. We were all so close, you know, we consider ourselves brothers and sisters. And later on, I'm talking like 20 years, he was getting older and he had to leave. And he left, and I told my wife, what are we going to do now? And I said, well, you know, I always believe that you need to go to church somewhere. So we started going to the Assembly of God. And we've been there close to, I think it's close to 30 years. Real close to 30 years. And I found that guy that actually used to put that first tract that I read. It was Erwin Tucker was his name. He was a mechanic in the haul trucks, and I told him, and he told he was the one that put him in. But anyway, ever since then, then later on, my wife got saved, and we've been saved close to 28. How old am I? Close to 43 or 45 years. Our kids are saved. Our grandkids were believing for their salvation. But you know, time goes so fast. I tell people, don't wait. Time is just too fast. And you know, I remember one of my favorite scriptures is, I think it's John 6:68. And this was after Jesus, people following Jesus, a lot of disciples. He preached that one, unless you eat my flesh and drink my blood, you will have no part of me. And a lot of them left. As a matter of fact, they all left, except for the 12. And I remember Jesus looked at Peter. He says, will you also leave? And Peter said, where shall we go? Who else has eternal life? And that's what we ought to look at. You know, a lot of people, they get discouraged and everything, but where else are you going to go? Who else has eternal life? Nobody else. Just Jesus.